Be diving into the element of our color even deeper, because there's so many things that we can take in account into color, and color is predominantly what we work with in our photographs. We do some black and white photographing, but to understand how color works will help progress and advance our photographs as well. So what color theory is learning how colors work together in certain color schemes, and how that can have an overall effect in your artwork. So let's take a look at some color schemes, what that actually means. So our first color scheme that we're going to be learning about are called complementary colors. So you have to be a little familiar with the color wheel. Here's an example on the left side, but it's basically a color prism bent into a circular format. And complementary colors are colors that are across from each other on the color wheel. And what happens when you are to put these two colors together is they produce an achromatic color, which means they cancel each other out. So if I were to mix two complementary colors, generally they make like a grayish, brownish, mucky color. It's not really a color because all of the hues inside of it have been canceled out to make this kind of nothingness. But if you were not to mix those colors and put just two different complementary colored objects next to each other, generally they work really well together, and they can create a really harmonious feeling in your artwork, a really nice and balanced feel as well. So we're going to be touching on three main complementary color schemes, but there are many, many, many more in the color wheel that you could play around with if you are interested in that. So let's take a look at the first one, which complementary colors that we're going to be covered always have a primary color and a secondary color involved into it, which our first one is red and green. See that they are across from each other in the color wheel. And we can see how they work together once you position them. So our figure is mainly red and our background is green, and they work really well. He definitely stands out and pops out, but also it really works together and creates a really balanced feel. Another example down below here, she stands out so much in this photograph because of her reddish clothing and this greenish background, and she also has green eyes against her red clothing. It works so perfectly. It creates this really harmonious, balanced photograph, but she definitely stands out, her green eyes, because she has a bit more of a red tinted skin and a red tinted fabric that she pops out so nicely. Same with this green figure compared to all the red ones right here. He definitely pops out the most because he is the green figure. If you're ever unsure of to tell if your figure to ground ratio, if you can figure out what to look at, if you blur your photograph and you can still see what the predominant subject is, then you know your photo works well compositionally, that you don't have to edit or make any big changes, that we can definitely tell what we should be looking at when it is blurred. So the next complementary color scheme is blue is our primary color and orange is our secondary color. Orange and blue, which in this photograph, our monks are wearing orange, and against this blue background, they definitely stand out. They pop, but it feels together and well balanced. And as you can see, blue and orange are across from each other on the color wheel. Same with this one down here. The figures in the orange clothing are popping out against this bluish background, but it still feels well put together, perfectly fitting together, well balanced. Same with this figure, even though we have almost 50% blue over here and 50% of this orange red color, they work well, they work balanced. It definitely feels like it fits as a whole. So we covered two of the three. We're missing the other primary and secondary complementary color scheme. I'll give you a moment to take a look at it. Maybe you can figure it out. If you haven't figured it out, we covered red and green, we covered orange and blue. Our last primary complementary color scheme are yellow, and our secondary is violet. But as you can see, there's all these tertiary intermediate colors in between the primaries and the secondaries. All of these would work as complementary color schemes as well, like red orange to blue green or blue violet to yellow orange. As long as they are across from each other, they work just fine. So that's our first color scheme, or complementary colors. Our next color schemes that we're going to learn about, which we touched on a little bit last week, are warm versus cool colors. So when you think of something that's warm, generally what comes to mind are oranges, reds, and yellow things. And when you think about cool things, generally what comes to the brain are blues, purples / violets, or green colors as well. And we're going to see how those work and the overall effect that they have on the photographs in just a little bit. So warm colors, as you think, like the sun produces such warm lighting that this captures it almost perfectly, going from our red to our red orange to our orange to our yellow orange to our yellow right there. And really warm and inviting into this artwork. Same with this of our landscape of our sandstone right here. Same thing, a little less high of an intensity of a color. This one's a bit more saturated down, where it's not as bright and intense, but it still has all those reds, oranges, and yellows. Fall is a perfect time to gather those warm colors, and even though these leaves in the back have a little bit of a yellow-green color, they still work into that warm color scheme. Same with these peppers down below here, even though it has some of this green, yellow-green, because it's predominantly those warm colors, we see it as a warm colored photograph. Nice, inviting, and balanced. Next color scheme are cool colors, which those are purples, blues, and sometimes greens, and how you use them. So this landscape of the ocean and the sky, really cool, calm feeling. Same with this ice down below, where this ice is a little less intense. It's a bit more saturated, or a low saturation, excuse me. That very cool, calm feeling. Same with this one, minus it's a little kind of dreary and dingy is what I'm getting out of it, maybe because of the fog, but very cool and chill, relaxed feeling that you're getting in this photograph. Same with this one down below. That fog, that haze creates kind of a cool, calm feeling. So what those cool and warm colors do. So warm colors tend to be more active, and they pull you, advance you into the photograph, painting, or whatever you're viewing, where cool colors tend to recede you into the background, like pull you in. They're way less active, not as like looking around and things like that. So warm are more active and stimulating and energetic, and cool colors tend to be calming, relaxing, and very chilled out. So depending on what type of feeling that you're wanting, you may want to really progress into a certain color scheme. Where this one uses cool colors, very cool, chilled, relax. This one, very warm colors, pulling us in, very active, looking all around. This one has a mixture, a little bit of cool and warm worked in to see. So our next color scheme to learn about are analogous colors. So going back to the color wheel, these colors are just next to each other on the color wheel. Let me go back up to the color wheel. So they have to be neighbors on the color wheel, meaning like these are all neighbors, they're touching, or these are all neighbors, or these are all neighbors, or these are all neighbors. They have to be around each other. It's not segregated into just warm and cool. You can mix and match warm and cool for analogous color schemes, where this one using yellow, orange, orange, red, and red, orange to create a really interesting and active mood into the artwork. Where this one uses a bit more of blue, green, green, blue colors to create this whole harmonious sense and really relaxed and chilled out vibe with that one. This one, a little bit low saturation of blues and greens as well to create that harmonious sense. Our next color scheme are monochromatics. So monochromatic color schemes are just one color and lights and darks of that one color. So this is used to create a sense of balance and unity throughout your artwork to really show that it works as a whole. So this example of just pink and the different variety of pinks worked in. The reds right here, strawberries with the red bowl, red background, all of it is red. Or the green example right here, all of it is green. Works really nicely together. That one's pretty easy. So our next one I've been talking about a little bit just to get you prepped for it, which color saturation. So saturation is the richness or the vibrance of the color. And you can sometimes have dull colors, like for example on this one where you have a pale green meadow when it's a cloudy sky day, where there's not a lot of color popping through, whereas a high saturation, like a field full of bright pumpkins on a sunny morning where it's just shining the light on the orange color, that would be a high saturation versus a low saturation of just a very yellow, brownish kind of a field comparatively. So let's take a look at those examples. So this is an example of a low saturation, meaning that there's not a lot of color going on. This blue in the background definitely isn't like wham, bam, blue. It doesn't stand out too much, but there is a little bit there, where this example of a high saturation, there's definitely a lot of color going on. We have purples, reds, oranges, yellows, greens. That this is definitely way more of a colored photograph than this low saturation. They're both colored photographs, but their saturation of color are different. Your slide for what you're going to be doing on your presentation, you're going to be taking one photograph and editing it where it has a low color saturation and then a high color saturation, editing both of those to really push and pull the colors to tell the difference. It's also important, so we've been talking about color, but we also need to understand when not to use color. So some images just will look best in black and white. If it is too much going on in your background or other areas in your photograph and it's taking away from the subject itself, you may want to just even try to view it in a black and white format, in a grayscale format, to see if it makes it a better photograph. Sometimes it does, and it can really pick up on those other elements of art to make it interesting. Like this image of this bubble. We wouldn't be able to see the textures, all these designs in the bubble without it being so black and white. This grass would probably take away from all of this really cool stuff going on in this bubble. Or this image of the train, the steam, especially up above here, super interesting texture, but I don't think we would focus on that if we had a crazy colored photograph down below. So next one, this photograph of this older woman The texture of her skin and her jewelry is definitely standing out. Whereas if this was a colored photograph, maybe we would be more paying attention more to the color of her skin or the color of her eyes or whatever. But with the black and white, it draws you into different areas. So those are color schemes. We should have been taking notes on just the general idea of what they are. And then your next task is to go out and photograph these color schemes and put them together in a Google slideshow. You will be editing one photograph 2 times, one with a low saturation and one with a high saturation. I will show you how to do that on Photopea with a tutorial.